It's okay that it hurts.
Mm.
And and then like pick yourself up and brush yourself off and try again. You, I've always heard this about successful people, that the ones who are successful just didn't quit.
Hi, Heather. So great to have you here today. Welcome to Success in Mind.
I'm so happy you asked me. Thanks so much.
So, I am really fascinated by the creative process and what inspires you as a writer. So, where do you get inspiration from? And then, how do you translate your inspiration into a successful book?
I have been writing since I was 5 years old, as long as I could spell, I guess. And so a lot of that took place up at my family's cottage, which is interestingly enough in Quebec, where I live. But we're from Ottawa, but I ended up here, living here later on in life. And our cottage allowed for a tree fort that my dad and I
Oh,
built.
cool.
And um, even my mother once took me, poor lady, because she doesn't like frogs that much, frog and turtle hunting. Um,
Nice.
and so nature was a real element growing up, and it still is today because we live on an island. I've always been inspired in nature. I've written poems in nature. And so I'd say
Wow.
my poetry mostly is nature and family, and a little bit as I got into my 30s and technology, when we started getting the cell phones, technology and how it helps and hinders in both ways, helps and hinders relationships. And then that moved into a theme of my novels. So I
Okay.
would say family and nature is also in my novels, but the technology theme and how it can be helpful and how it can also rip people apart has been a theme throughout all of my works.
Amazing. Have you always known that you were going to be a writer?
I think I always knew I was going to write. I wasn't sure how it would translate in which medium. And I used to, when I was about 14, 15, think, well, I did become a journalist, but I used to try to get a journalism job as early as 17, going to our local paper and taking photos and writing for them. And then at the high school, I was on the paper, writing an awful lot, yearbook staff, so all the writing things, but it was more of a journalism element. And I think it wasn't until my final year, we had grade 13 there, so fifth year, that I started writing poems and realizing how it was a way I could express myself more emotionally than you can with journalism. So that started at 19. And so then from
Wow.
19 on, I think it moved more into, oh, I want to do fiction, but I still didn't even think about writing a novel until I was 40. And it wasn't published till I was 41.
Wow.
Yeah. So it started at 19 in different kinds of writing. And I would think about that and I'm like, wow, that's something inspiring for people to know, that I wasn't published until I was 41.
Well, that inspires me because I'm 42 and
Okay.
looking at writing my first book. So that's really good to know that you can do this at any time, any
You
age.
really can, honestly. And probably the wisdom that you get in those years and the authenticity that you're more able to be
Mm.
yourself is probably more to your benefit, I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I found, and I don't know if this was your experience, but I found turning 40 was such a powerful shift in my
Hmm.
identity and how I present myself, my confidence. I hear that from a lot of women. Did you find
Yeah.
that?
Uh, 40, I guess, with the book for sure, but that was more my career
Hmm.
changing and shifting, because I used to work from home more. I've always worked from home for 20 years as a
Wow.
freelancer. I started my own business 1999. Uh, but it was more, I wrote and edited a law magazine. And I also wrote and edited for some career magazines, helping people find their career, which is interesting because I did a podcast on Instagram helping others learn from authors and publishers. So I've always had that career, help others in their careers kind of bent. But
Yeah.
40s was career. And when I hit 50, it was more like, I've always been authentic, but I think even more so, like people saw me
Mm.
with this purple wig. They
Yeah.
think it was, now I'm now the cat's out of the bag. Uh, but being able to do that kind of thing because it was a mood, which I'll wear
Hmm.
again because I love it. Um, so just being comfortable in your own skin, which is a poem I wrote. How long
Oh,
will we live uncomfortable in our own skin, wearing woolen mittens wet because we lack alternatives? I wrote that at 19, and I didn't even kind
oh
of
wow.
listen, like, be more you, but I was saying it to myself. And
Yeah.
I think I was, but it's a process. Like with every
Hmm.
year I became more take it or leave it. This is me.
Well, I love the purple wig. I know that's how you and I met, was through social media,
Yes.
right? And I would say that's what has drawn me to you, is how authentic you are, that you are who you are, you're funny, you're unapologetic, you're you online, and that's very relatable.
We need more of that, right? Because, and I'm not saying anything against plastic surgery or
Hmm.
looking your best, to each his own. But I think, especially the young people who are starting out, let's say they're starting out and they have to be on social media because of their career, but they're going to get the idea that they have to be perfect and have to look perfect and everything has to be just so. And so if I can dance with oven mitts in the kitchen, and it's for
Yeah.
fun and for my friends, but it's also for everybody out there who, I just maybe just had a whole day writing and then I'm doing that. So like it can show that you can morph the real side of you along with a professional side of you.
Yes.
You can have both. You can be successful professionally and be a bit of an idiot.
Well, that makes me feel very comfortable. Thank you. Can you walk us through what your daily routine is like around the creative process? Like, how do you maintain discipline and be creatively simultaneously?
So for every person, that's going to be different. But
Hmm.
for me, it's always been right in the morning. Always. There's never changed from the age of 20 when I started writing in poems and then journalism. Even journalism, I did not write late at night. So that's just me. But find your
Okay.
time, because as long as you find the time, people go, well, I go throughout the day sometimes. Well, that's not going to be that. You need consistency. So if you pick a time, if
Mhm.
it's noon, fine, but it's noon every day or 5 days a week. Uh, and that consistency keeps you coming back on the rougher days. You can always do it when you're passionate about the piece, but when you're
Right.
not sure about it or it's just not working, the fact that you told yourself, I'm doing this week, Monday to Friday, from 7:30 to 12:30. So that's what I do right now. But it's changed over the years. When I had a younger family, sometimes when my toddler was 3 or 4, it was preschool hours when they went to preschool for a few hours. So I'd walk them to
Right.
school on their sleigh, and then in the snow because we're in Montreal, come back, be freaking wet, cold, and come to the desk and write. And I also did it at 4 in the morning too. When people say, I don't have time because I have a full time job.
Mhm.
Again, I don't mean to be negative because like everybody has challenges, and sometimes people don't even have a family that supports them, which is such a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But I've talked to people over the years. It's one of the things I love to do is encourage them to even get started. And my cat's going to howl throughout this.
That's
There's
okay.
also like those elements. How does your pet react to you? And you have to find, I mean, if you're working from home, like
Yeah.
there's so many different challenges that way. But if your partner isn't supportive, believe in yourself. Find a library, go to the library and write. Because people are saying, I've had people write me and say I'm in an abusive relationship, and I'm like, well, get out. But
Oh,
then,
yeah.
yeah, but then find your time, and then with the time, if you're working 9 to 5, come home and have to cook. That's really hard for whichever parent it is, male or female. But I've just said, well, you're just going to have to add an hour. So like 5 a.m. to 6, if you really want to make this happen. So that's creative process is for me consistency,
Okay.
and uh, and then the afternoons, setting a schedule for yourself so that you keep to it. So then my afternoons are business and email, and now I do coaching. So I have
Yeah.
uh, coaching writers
Cool.
on in the afternoons and a couple evenings a week.
Wow. So how do you deal with, like, you schedule those times where you're writing, and do you ever find yourself just staring at the screen? You have no idea what to write, or you're in a period of low creativity, and how do you handle it?
Hasn't happened to me like that. And so I've always thought,
Nice.
what the heck? How am I so different from others? So, and this is the first time I've admitted that, because to admit that sounds like I have no issues with writing. And I do. I
Mm-hmm.
honestly do. But it's more just starting, just getting started. Once I'm started, because I have to decide that I love the project enough to work on it. For novels, it's about 4 months. It can change.
Okay.
Uh, for poetry, it's different. The poems flow out of me quite quickly, and they're not actually sitting down at the desk necessarily. That's the editing process, that morning times for the poems. So for me, for people who are stuck, because people have asked me,
Mm-hmm.
and all the time, and I say that I think you have to be passionate about the project, and then maybe you'll be unstuck, because if a lot of the time you're just not feeling it. So if you want to stick with that project, but you're stuck and you're staring at a blank page, uh, try different art for a while. That's really
Oh,
worked for me.
yeah.
Yeah, like I just go in oil paint or I cartoon. I started cartooning for like 2 months. They're probably still on Facebook. It was
Oh,
called
cool.
Beyond the Picket Fence, and it was about my family, because like picket fence, we're not always, nobody lives in a picket fence. Uh,
Yeah.
and I did that for a while until I think it was during Strangely Incredibly Good, writing my first novel, and I came back to it. Okay, another example is with Strangely Incredibly Good, my first novel. Um, I never thought I was going to write a novel, but some other writers egged me on and convinced me to do so. And it was so kind of them. I was at a poetry reading at Chapters, and they handed me a kit, how to write a novel, and I started laughing. They said,
Oh,
Heather, we
cool.
think you should write a novel now. So I took the kit home, and it really helped me define characters and their fatal flaw and write them all out. And I
Oh.
don't use it. I haven't used it for years, but it was a really good start. But um, I think being passionate about the project is how you get started. And I was doing home staging for a while because I just couldn't figure out what I was doing with Strangely Incredibly Good. I put it in a drawer.
Mhm.
Um, Someone had also made fun of the idea, and I listened to them at a
Oh.
dinner party. I listened to them. Don't do that. Listen to your own
Mm-hmm.
instincts. And then I put it in a drawer, started home staging. It didn't work out because this is a funny story. My cat ate the ottoman, literally ate the ottoman. I bought an ottoman $200 to
Oh,
stage someone's
wow.
home, and a bunch of other stuff, adding up to about $600, and was so excited to stage. And I'm here. I'm actually writing up here. I ran downstairs to see how the ottoman was because I heard something, and he started eating it, like took the stuffing like a dog would,
Oh my
more like a
God.
dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has an eating disorder.
Oh, poor guy. Oh, I get that. I have two dogs, so I understand.
It
I
really happened,
understand
and
that.
I ended up putting it in one of the novels, and I ended up. It's one of the funniest stories of my career because that happened. I was devastated. I also stopped staging because realtors were doing it themselves at that time a lot more, so they didn't really
Hmm.
hire a stager. So I went back to Strangely Incredibly Good. Well, that was my first novel, and then it was published like 3 months after that happened. I found a publisher, and I've
Amazing.
been writing novels ever since. So I thank Marmy. It was Marmy every day. He's over his pica. He doesn't do it anymore.
Good.
He was eating holes in dish towels. So
Oh, my
sometimes,
dog does
not
that.
I'm going to sound like either Mr. Rogers or somebody, um, but sometimes these things that happen that rip apart your soul and your career and what these obstacles actually end up being help to you in the end, but you just don't
Hmm.
see it until you get to the place.
Your
You
cat
know,
knew. He knew. He knew he needed to be redirected somewhere
and
else.
people say cats are creepy, but this one's freaking psychic.
Yeah. Well, I think they're incredibly intuitive. So, what are some of the challenges that you faced in your writing career? And, like, what are some of the things you've had to overcome?
So I mean, that was kind of difficult,
Yeah.
trying to realize that realizing that's meant for you. I think that's a big step for a lot of people. Believing that you're a novelist, believing that you're a writer. A lot of people
Hmm.
aren't able to call themselves that when they're starting out. And I think when you start saying it to yourself and to others, and don't say it uh, quietly and shyly, say it
Yeah.
with confidence. I'm a writer. Writers don't have to be published. If you've written something and it means something to you and it meant something to somebody else, then you're a writer.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that
So
takes a lot of the pressure off, right?
yeah, and I just think also I've come to realize, but who it's your life. So I mean,
Yeah.
who's to say that you're not a writer? But it would be great if you can get published and be an author. And that's how I use the two terms. Like an author actually has authored something and it's been published. But so that's okay. So that was one challenge, just believing that I was that and owning it. And it started with poet, like saying I was a poet was my 20s and 30s. And then I moved to novelist. And I also think
Yeah.
um, getting published, because I got first published with Strangely, and it happened very fast with a small Canadian publisher. But then Remarkably Great was the sequel because some readers asked for it, which I didn't expect. I'd written it with a neat
Mm-hmm.
little bow, like it was tied up neatly, but it still had room for a sequel. It was kind of a
Okay.
happily until now ending, and they wanted a happily ever after. So they wrote me, and so I wrote the
Mm.
sequel and thought, I guess I'm writing novels now. But my publisher was deciding to go more into author services. And I didn't really want to be hiring them for all of that. I wanted an actual publisher at the time. So they were great though, because the editor ended up being my editor, and I paid her. You should always
Nice.
pay for services like that. Pay for
Mm-hmm.
good, helpful graphic designers, and don't do it all yourself. Get a good cover designer, get a
Yeah.
good editor, a highly reputable editor. Like make sure you've got recommendations. And yeah, so just trying to find a publisher for Remarkably Great and the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
When I'd done so well with Strangely Incredibly Good, it had done well. It had actually been a bestseller in 4 countries on as an ebook on Kindle.
Oh,
But
amazing.
so it had done really well. So I had confidence I could take it and self-publish the next one. But but that didn't turn out that way. I sent it to so many different publishers. I had one, and she was lovely. So there's nothing against her. It's just it was really a difficult time for me because there was an agent. You have to find an agent, usually,
Okay.
most of the time. Uh, People say you can just get a publisher. Well, these days you have to have an agent to open the door to these publishers. But
Okay.
and this agent was laughing. She wrote me and said, "I'm laughing about Remarkably Great in the bus. I'm laughing out loud. I can't stop laughing. Can I
Wow.
have the full?" Which is asking for the full manuscript. And then I waited 4 months with not much word. And then when I got it back, when she responded back, it was a no. And it was a sorry. It was very polite, but there was no explanation. And that's happened a lot in my career. And I've just found a publisher who isn't like that. So I'm like just the last few days. And so
Oh,
I'm
wow.
really in awe and excited. It's female owned, and nothing against guys, but it's just that they understand a lot of the women's challenges, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily going to be published with this agency, which is amazing in and of itself. Because if you can find somebody who's going to constructively criticize your work, constructively, and help you move into the next step and move forward, that's fantastic. Don't ever lose sight of that person.
Yeah.
But if they send something back and just go, "It's not for me," and you don't really understand why, then how can a person grow as a writer? And I was younger then too. I was 40 at that time. So that was the biggest challenge
Right.
because that happened with RG and with the ticket. And then again, you think these challenges are your obstacles, and in the end there's Marmy. In the end they end up being to your benefit, but you don't really
Mhm.
realize that was the way. Is the ticket became my bestseller. I self-published because I couldn't find an agent or a publisher who wanted it. It
Wow.
was close. A lot of them said, "Oh my gosh, this is so funny, but it's not in our publishing schedule," I guess is the words they used. It's not something
Yeah.
we're not publishing that kind of book right now, which is what I get a lot. We're not publishing that kind of book. I haven't talked about
Okay.
this a lot because I used to think it meant that I wasn't good, or it meant that I wasn't succeeding. It meant that something was wrong with my writing. And I've come to realize
Yeah.
that it just, it just wasn't right for them at the time. And it was all about business. It wasn't about my writing, because that book has sold 300,000 copies
Wow, that's
around the
amazing.
world. So you're so easy to talk to. You're making me cry because you're such a great
Oh,
listener.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
So that was such a hard time for me. And plus, I guess I was in my 40s. So God, menopause was starting. Perimenopause. I mean, I was a wreck. I'm thankful for my family for being so awesome. And and I went ahead and published the ticket, and I was sad. And I want a lot of writers to understand now, you can relate to me, because it feels like a failure when you self-publish. There's still a stigma attached.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this means I'm not as good, but I'll just put it out there. And then had producers calling me. They called my house. I've had 3 producer talks and 1 meeting about the ticket becoming a movie. And
That's
and all this,
incredible.
because I've just been emotional. Hopefully you'll all see that I'm not having an ego here. It's just been such a journey. And I want people to know that just because you're rejected, it doesn't mean you're not any good. It doesn't mean you can't succeed. It doesn't mean you can't sell hundreds of thousands of copies of your work. You just have to find the right way. And I think one of the challenges is people quit after like 5 rejection letters. Now I had
Yeah.
only put out, I think I only put out like 40 letters for the ticket. I'd done a lot more for Remarkably Great. But what happened was Remarkably Great was starting to sell well on Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and now I know that fantasy doesn't sell quite well. That kind of fantasy, funny fantasy, doesn't sell quite as well as humorous and spicy romance with some
Oh,
depth. Like I
interesting.
always try to put depth in my books. I mean, not as deep as some literary works, but some of, like the themes I told you about, like
Yeah.
technology can be to our help or hindrance. So I just thought I'm going to sell the ticket, because it's going to sell more, and it did. It did a lot better than the other books. The other books are still doing well, but the ticket's by far
Yeah.
the best one. Yeah. Okay.
I'm reading it right now and loving it. Like
Thank you.
absolutely love it. It's my kind of genre of book, and it's such a fun read, and I'm excited to read more of your books after this one because it's so good. It's so
Well,
fun to read.
thank you for saying that, because I'm proud of it. But again, when a creative person does their most recent work, they're usually most proud of their most recent book. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm growing. I'm becoming a better writer. I think my last 2 books, Lauren from Last Night and Lucky, are more literary because, and you were talking a bit about, being commercial and being creative.
Yeah.
And I mixed the 2 in those. They're creative, they're zany, so that when they're a bit quirky, they don't necessarily mean that they're going to be commercial, because not everybody is quirky. Not everybody. Yeah. Commercial means
Yeah.
more of the crowd is going to relate to it, I think, is the best way to put it for a new
Right.
writer starting out. When you write more of your own view of the world, of course it's going to be more, probably not sell as well, because it's
Mm-hmm.
something more particular to you and your interests. So commercial means something that more people can relate to.
So how do you find that balance between writing what's commercial and what's going to, what there's a demand for in the market versus what you want to write and your passion for your
Mm-hmm.
project?
Because I've been at this so long, I realize I've done a lot of both. And so you can have both and make a living, a small living. Like I do I am supported. Sometimes I've been able to make enough to go on vacations and help with the college fund for Finn.
Yeah.
Um, and then other years, so it's not steady. Some years when the ticket did great, and then Good Nights did great, that was phenomenal, and I made a lot of money. But it's not steady. So
Okay.
I started realizing, okay, so I got to feed my soul and feed my creativity. Luckily, I can do that a bit more than some people who want to do this to pay the bills. If you want to do writing to pay the bills, you're going to have to speak. You're going to have to make sure you get your audiobooks done, because audiobooks are huge
Mm,
now. So you need to get your books into different kinds of, your work into different kinds of streams. So different is what I meant. Okay,
okay.
for the people who don't know what I mean. Income streams is really important for a writer. So um, you can make a living. You definitely can, but there's speaking, there's audiobooks. I'm doing a webinar for a writers group in December.
Oh,
Um, what else? And then you can also on the side. You'll be exhausted though. Do, technical writing, writing for companies, writing for
Mm-hmm.
magazines on top of all that. A lot of people don't know, I don't think, that I started off as a journalist and I wrote for magazines and edited. So I was making quite an income as a writer, freelance. A lot of freelance writers can't do that, but because I figured out how to sell to magazines and do contract work for like 6 months writing for Reader's Digest, I wrote an atlas. I wrote Atlas.
Oh,
I've done it
wow.
all because you have to, if you want to make money as a writer, you got to find these different income streams. And then the balance came along. I think when I had a kid, I think because I had more time and I was at home, I thought maybe now's the time to feed me and do some stuff for my soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped writing regularly I had a column at the Queen's Alumni Review magazine, and I loved it. And I loved working with my editor, Ken. He was
Yeah.
such a great mentor to me. I've had a few of those. Uh, and that's important that I just said that it was a man, because I was saying earlier, I like working with a woman. It's just for different times in your life, I think, in different projects. He was really great
Yeah.
at directing me for journalism and for writing a column. Um, and he told me one lesson, and this is an aside. He said, as a writer, make sure your reader, after they've read your piece, is walking away and they've learned something.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. So that's your mission. Well, I can do that. I try to do that in fiction too. And that's where I
Okay.
probably go wrong a bit with it. Doesn't turn out as commercial that way because I'm trying to give a bit of a message or a theme. And that's not always commercial because people they don't always want to know what the author thinks, feels, even if I put it through the
Mm.
character's words, like even if the character's saying it. But anyways, that's an aside. If I'm making sense about like the
Oh, totally.
commercial versus creative is really tough to balance. And so at that time in my life, and when I started to write my first novel, I thought, just do it, just write what you and a few close friends would enjoy. So do this for yourself
Mm.
and for a few close friends. And, if it doesn't succeed, you can always go back to writing for magazines. And I didn't have to.
Yeah. What is I just have some questions here that have come through from the audience.
Oh,
So what
good.
was it that made you first realize that you were a writer? That's from Jerry.
There's two parts of that answer, Jerry, because you just saw me get emotional about, and so I'm realizing the truth is that when I was a sellable writer, when I could sell and interest a large audience and it was relatable and it was touching them, I would say the ticket. And again, it's not my best writing, so it's just something I hit something. I hit a nerve, and I hit a funny bone too, with enough people. But
Mhm.
so I'd say 2017, 2018, when that went, it did really well, and then producers were calling, and they're still interested. But the thing is, there's only one me, and I have to push. I'm either going to go and be knocking on screenwriters' doors and spend a year doing that, or spend a
Mhm.
year building my Instagram, which is what I did last year. Anyway, the answer is
Yeah.
that, but also Jerry, probably again, like a writer of the soul, and was 5 years old in my tree fort that I had at the cottage. Just writing, I would read Archie comic books and eat bazooka gum, and I
Yeah.
would write on a little notepad, write poems and stories. I wrote short stories a lot as a kid.
Oh.
I wrote short stories that always ended with, and it was all a dream.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, and what was I saying about oh, something came up right with the ticket. Oh yeah, so just realizing I could do that then helped me continue. And not everybody will continue as a self-published author because they don't have that success that I had.
Mhm.
So I think what I'd say to that, I have a lot of students who ask, like, how do you know when you should quit? But if it's giving you something, if it's feeding your soul and it's making you happy and it's
Mhm.
some sort form of therapy for you, which has been for me, then keep doing it. You don't have to push yourself to make money. Maybe you're going to have to work
Right.
a, a day job and do it at night just for the joy. But don't do anything that, we spend what, 8 hours a day? I once calculated all the
Mhm.
hours a year we spend at work. So you better be doing something that you love, because we spend more time
Yeah.
at work than we do with our loved ones from 5 to 9 before we fall asleep to Netflix,
What is
right?
you've talked a bit about, how you went from more traditional publishing into self-publishing. Can you tell us a little bit more about the pros and cons of each, and um, what should we be looking at in terms of if we're going down the self-publishing route? What does that process kind of look like?
So I think the biggest benefit to self-publishing is creative control.
Mm.
You can choose your cover, you can choose your title, you can choose the emotional ups and downs, the character arc, I guess is what I'm saying. Whereas when you work with a publisher, they're going to have reasons why that won't work, and I've done both, and I've loved both. So I would, and I'm a hybrid author. I still might get published by a publisher. I still might also do another self published piece, and that's a beautiful
Yeah.
place to be, where I can do both now. I'm It's hard to list all the pros and cons because it's also personal, right? I mean, if you want to
Right.
make a lot of money, um, right now, self publishing can probably make more because t-
Really?
well, if you apply yourself and you have a bit of disposable income to to put advertising ahead, and because that's the thing, is you are
Mhm.
putting your money in. That's what I did for Graceful Publications. I I put, at one point, I mean, I was making money, but at one point I was definitely, everything that I made went back into the business, into
Mhm.
advertising, into hiring a cover designer. And then I rebranded myself for the ticket and Good Nights. That's when I started rebranding. And that was another positive. And I would suggest that to people, that have your books, if you're doing a series, which sell a lot better, have a consistent font and a consistent color, not one color, but like a brand, a color. You are your brand. I tell my clients that an author is the brand.
Oh yeah.
So, now I'm being, I'm trying to be funny on Instagram, but trying to be funny. People say I am.
You are funny.
Oh, thank you. But, um, right. But it turns out that's my brand, but it took a while to figure out, oh, okay, being funny, but also emotional is
Mhm.
my brand, being Heather. Like, but some people won't want to do that. And especially if you're starting out, oh, I have to put my face on. I was telling a student, you need a brighter picture for Instagram. It needs to be yellow or a brighter color behind you, and it needs to be like that to show your face. And they
Mhm.
were really shy about that. And it was just the other day, and I said, okay, but the problem is that people want to connect with you. They want to know. You don't
Yes.
have to give your pride. You don't have to say what you ate for dinner with your husband last night, but
Mhm.
to say how you're. For me, this is important for my brand. How my husband has been solid as a rock, and he's my trip in Good Nights. Right,
Yeah.
like, not exactly, of course, everything's fictionalized, but that that is what your readers want. They want to connect. How it does my life connect to my books?
Right.
Yeah.
What would you
Did I
say
answer your
are,
question?
yes, you did. You did. What would you say are some of the strategies that you've used in building your personal brand?
So, like I was saying, the one of the biggest surprises to me was something as simple as I wasn't selling again. Well, again, no, the tickets sold. Sorry, but with RG, Remarkably Great,
Mhm.
my venture into self publishing, because I was now self publishing. The original publisher gave back our rights. It wasn't just me; it was all the authors. They just went a different way than us. Gave us back our rights after 2 years. So then I owned all the rights to my books. So then I repackaged them, and that was the smartest thing I ever did, because I changed the covers, and then I made all my covers with the same kind of font, the same
Mhm.
look. So don't skimp on your covers. Don't. I spent thousands. Now I'm finding new ways to spend a little less. I just used getcovers.com. You guys might want to look into that.
Oh.
Getcovers.com to do, because I'd had a graphic designer, and I paid them to do all of the Love Again series and my fantasy series, Strangely Incredibly Good. But I wanted to do wraparound covers. And I wish I had done that a long time ago, because I did the KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing.
Mhm.
They give you so many amazing tools, and that's why I've always worked with them, because they want to help and build authors a lot more, in my opinion, than other platforms. And they want
Cool.
to. Right now, they're advertising for me, and I'm not paying for advertising. I noticed that they were advertising. They put emotional depth, looking for emotional depth in your books, and then it was my books, and I was like,
Oh, wow.
now I have advertised, and they know that I do, so I guess I'm selling them. I'm helping Amazon, right? So
Yeah.
so it's the smartest thing you can do to create something that your audience will remember you by, because it
Hmm.
takes, I think I heard 7 times, it might be 3, but it's either 3 or 7 times, you might know because you're in business, before a
Yeah.
person actually, like, they might see it pass by their, as they're scrolling or on TV, for example, or whatever. And then the I think it's the third time maybe that they actually click and kind of registers, oh, I think I want this.
Hmm.
So every time you need to be consistent with how they see you, your brand, so that kind of, oh, those colors in that font, that's a Heather Gray Stewart book.
Yeah. Well, that's, and you're right, it is 7. It's 7
It's
points
7. God.
of contact for people to even, for it to even register with them. So that doesn't even mean that they'll be at a point where they go, "Oh, I want to buy that." It's for them to even clue in that they're seeing it takes 7
Mm-hmm.
points.
So KDP lets you build on your paperback book, and I didn't have the money right then to pay for wraparounds. I've done some wraparounds, but then I rebranded. So I bought the
Yeah.
wrap. They're gorgeous, and then
Hmm.
a few years later I rebranded. So then I need to do it again. So now I've just done. You've seen them, the new
Hmm. They're
hardcovers
beautiful.
and paperbacks, and I think that's really worth the money, because it it is what people see first. And I would say the
Yeah.
cover and the back blurb. I learned how to write a back cover blurb, and I'm really cautious about how I write that, and I even rewrite them sometimes,
Wow.
because the first thing they the first contact they have, maybe it's you, and then the next thing they click, they go, oh, okay, that's interesting, and then they click on, and then they
Mhm.
see the cover, and then they read the blurb.
And it's so funny because there's that old saying of don't judge a book by its cover, but that's how I pick my books. As I see
Mm-hmm.
the cover, if the cover entices me, then I want to read the blurb and read what it's about. And if that gets me, I'll read the first couple lines or a preview of the book and then I buy it. So that's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's exactly how we do it.
I think that a lot of my mistakes I've made are being too proud in a certain way. Like, I didn't want to put
Mm.
my book free, my first book in a series, free for the longest time. I worked so hard. I was a journalism mentality, and I'd been working with the Writers Union of Canada, and I still do, and I love them. And it's true. Pay the writer. We've been earning as
Yeah.
writers the same freaking, I don't know, what is it, 35 cents a word? It's gone up now. I earned $1 a word for Reader's Digest, but I think it still sits around that for writing in
Wow.
journalism. So I was of that mentality, like, pay the writer. And I'd done a lot of working, trying to ask the government to be kinder to us with copyright laws. Now
Hmm.
copyright laws are really different because of AI, whole other thing. And
Yeah.
it's and so when I thought, the book that I wrote, people are suggesting in courses for self-publishing that I give the first one free. Again, the best thing I ever did. I
Really.
Strangely Incredibly Good got a book pub deal, which was really awesome. You do have to have had a lot of reviews and a lot of interest in the book. So I
Hmm.
managed to land a book pub deal, and that gave Strangely Incredibly Good free to, I think it was 12,000 downloads
Wow.
for free. So I was like, oh my gosh, I could have had like $12,000, right? At first I thought that, but in the
Hmm.
end, it all came back and more, because people read the book. Oh, who is this person? It's like testing a car. Do you just buy the
Yeah.
car, or do you take it for a test drive? You like the features. You go, well,
Hmm.
maybe I'll take another model. Maybe the other model is comparative to the second in the series for books. Same kind of thing, where you
Right.
get a taste for you know, what the author's all about. And so I always say to people who go, oh, can I just give like a little novella or a little piece of the first book, because I don't want to give the whole first book free? Sure, especially if you've just got the one book. So when you put your first book out, Terry, you
Hmm.
should set up a mailing list where you give a little excerpt free, at least, so that
Oh,
they
yeah.
read that, and then also they can get that for free, and that's how you can get mailing list people, because they sign up for that. Or you could do a prelude that's even longer. Like, I've been wanting to do a novella, like 18,000 to 20,000 for all of my series, and I haven't gotten to it yet. But then I can give
Oh,
that
wow.
instead of the first and see if that even works better. I think the full book works better
Yeah.
though.
Okay. Oh, that's really good advice. That's so good to know. Um, can you share a little bit about publishing on Amazon and what the process is and Kindle Unlimited and how that what that looks like?
What do you know? Because there's so much to say. So,
Mm,
do you know how you do it? I mean, sorry,
I
do you know what
know
platform you go to and everything? What the website
no
is?
clue.
Okay, you're starting
No
from
clue.
zero,
From zero. Yeah.
but you've got a lot of knowledge about business, so that's cool. That's
Yeah.
a benefit for you. It's called Kindle Direct Publishing, and it's KDP dot Amazon dot I think it's Amazon.kdp.com.
Okay.
This is from memory. Just Google KDP. You
Perfect.
can do it for absolutely for free, everybody. That's what is the primary draw, and you don't have to pay anything. But like I said, don't be silly. Pay for an editor. If you want to, also, we want to
Mm,
level up the name of the self published author. And if people keep self publishing and not getting it properly edited, then of course there'll still be a stigma against self-published works. But if you do it
right.
professionally and you hire a reputable, don't just hire someone from, I was going to say it, 5 Hour or whatever. You don't know where they're coming from. Hire someone who's got a website, an actual website, um, and and has a lot of reviews. And you talk to some of the people who've worked with that person.
Okay.
Hire a graphic designer. This is going to put you back some money, but that's, if you want to make money, you're going to have to put this money in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there is that. So I said no money, but there's no money once you hit KDP, because you just
Okay.
upload it. It used to be a Word document, and it still can be a Word document. And then it's your ebook. They turn it into an ebook. But the best way now is
Mm.
called Kindle Create. It's a software, and it makes prettier books. So it puts those little
Oh.
dividers, and I've done all my ebooks recently that way. I used to hire someone to format, because you shouldn't do everything yourself. You'll just burn out.
No. No.
So I'd hire someone to format it, but now you can use Kindle Create. And if you're going wide with other platforms, you can't though, because it's Kindle Create. It's only for Kindle. But I've
Okay.
had success with Kindle Unlimited. It was half my
Mm-hmm.
income for the longest time, and now paperbacks are taking off for me too. So now
Wow.
paperbacks, and actual sales. There's actual sales of ebooks on Amazon, which are called sales. Then there's downloads, of which I've
Mm-hmm.
had thousands, and that's in the Kindle Unlimited library. And they read pages, and you get paid by the page. And a lot of authors had a lot of issues with how much, and it really is a ludicrous amount. 0.00, it's half a penny, I think, per page read. But
Wow.
yeah, it's not great. And yet I've always made more money that way than when I did try to put it wide. And wide means Kobo or
Mm-hmm.
or Apple, and they just don't promote the writer as much, in my opinion. And they also aren't, like, I called up Amazon all the time throughout the last few years. I've called them up, and if they don't know the answer to that person, then they'll say, well, we'll call you back, ma'am. They're so helpful. Of course, I put money into
Wow.
advertising on
Yeah.
Amazon, but even before that, I found them very polite, and they answered my questions if I was polite. And if I phoned, I think a lot of people try to just email.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be clogging up the phone lines now for Amazon. Talk to a person in person and be personable. Like, yeah, a lot of them are probably working from India or from somewhere
Mm-hmm.
foreign, and I think some people have issues with that too. I've made friends with my Amazon customer
Nice.
service people, because they're going to help me. They know the stuff. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're not in my country, but they know Amazon, and they can help me with. They've helped me understand if the system's down that day. A lot of people get angry. Well, I try not to get angry. I just say, okay, is it true? Is Amazon down right now? Yes, we're working on it. How about I email you, Heather, as soon as I know it's up? Like, I find it,
Great.
yeah, yeah. And so my experience has been great. Others might have another experience, but that's mine. And so I'll stick with them as long as I can when I'm self-publishing. And yes,
Okay.
your eyes seem to get bigger when I said you can make a lot more. Well, yeah, because you get 70% of an ebook's royalties. A
Right.
good publisher right now is giving 35%. And Other
Oh,
ones, I don't even know the numbers, but I think it's down to 20, like more like 20. So you're
interesting.
not getting a big chunk of money. And then they also take audiobook rights when you have a publisher. And so be careful what you sign because they might also take TV and film, and you probably want to keep those rights and sell them yourself,
Oh, that is good to
depending.
know.
Like there's
Yeah,
so much to know with that. There's another thing I was thinking actually before this. So I didn't really think about my answers for anything,
that's okay.
but I knew what you'd ask. And
Yeah.
I thought about like a challenge, and it's scams. So it occurred to me today, and I
Oh,
thought, oh, I should tell people about scams. I would
yeah.
say one of the biggest challenges in the last 5 years. So before that, there was all the other challenges I mentioned, but in the
Hmm.
last 5 years, there are more people trying to make a living off of writers than there are writers right now. And they're some of them
Really?
are helpful. Like I just, oh yeah, every single day, I because I have a verified Facebook page, and it's been verified forever. I was grandfathered into Instagram because I had they it was
Nice.
nice, so they verified me on Facebook 5 years ago, 6 years ago, as a Canadian author.
Hmm.
Um, People every day write me in an email. They don't know my name, so that's a clue. You know, it's just
Hmm.
hello, hello. I will pay you $3,000 a week if we can advertise on your Facebook page. I get that every day. Sometimes it's 200, sometimes it's 300, sometimes it's 3,000. I'm like, you don't know my name, but you're going to give me $3,000. So that's
Yeah.
a scam to get your email, I believe, or I don't know, but they want something. They want your money. They want your
Hmm.
credit card. I don't know. So I just ignore those. But my email is just so much spam, so I have to have different emails. Um, what
Yeah.
else? So that's one example. But then there's also you want to cut corners financially because you're trying to put so much
Hmm.
money up front, right? You're trying to, like I just said, for those services that you should do it for. But then you want to market your name, and I've been
Yeah.
inundated too with we will promote you on television, on Forbes magazine, on People magazine.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
take a little take read it carefully when you click. It's really sneaky though. When you click and you look, it's Forbes 2s's.com.
Yeah.
And so you're not on
Yep.
Forbes magazine at all. And people
No.
spend like I don't know how many thousands of dollars to be marketed by, and I don't know what the TV
Yep.
programs are. I'm not sure about that part. But I suspect maybe they won't even do it for you. They take your money and you don't see all the publicity.
Now you've talked about like hiring an editor, hiring a graphic designer.
Hmm.
What would be a realistic budget for somebody self-publishing their first book? If you could give us sort of like a
Oh
ballpark
my God.
range of what to expect. Like, are we expecting hundreds of thousands of dollars put into
No,
it? Are we expecting
no,
like a
no,
couple thousand?
no, a couple thousand.
Okay.
Like I think it's gotten cheaper actually for books because uh, you can do AI now. But I'm really against that because an artist is losing their
Mm,
salary. So I'd love if you guys didn't do that. I know it's an option, an AI designed
yeah.
cover. A lot of courses are saying it, and this is a new technology. But I have a graphic
Yeah.
designed young adult student who wants to get
Hmm.
work, so it's kind of a bit personal for me.
Yeah.
Um, so I was going to say that that's made things a little less expensive, but I think I spent $1,000 for an ebook cover and a wrap around like one book, 1,000. So if you have a series, it's 4,000.
Okay.
But you can make that in a month if you
Yeah.
on Amazon. You can make 4 grand if you advertise. So that's a whole other ballgame. You can't.
Hmm.
Your books will just be gathering dust like they are in the bottom level of a library if you don't advertise.
Right.
At least on Amazon, I love Amazon ads, but they do suck up a lot of money. They're expensive, and you don't always see the profits like that day, or not the day, but like say you do 2 weeks of ads, you
Hmm.
won't break even necessarily, but you'll then down the road see that you're selling more because you have gotten up in the ranks. What Amazon ads
Okay.
do essentially is make you visible. So maybe you won't sell enough to make back your money. You're going to have to take an ad course on Amazon ads because if you just do it
Hmm.
guessing, you'll lose some money. But
Right.
it gets you visible. Whereas if you just publish your book and that's it needs to be, the algorithm needs to know that it's popular.
Okay.
It's a lot like social media in that sense.
Yeah.
And then when it does really well, then it'll actually end up on Google, like I said. Amazon, I think, sends it to other platforms on their
Probably,
own.
yeah. Yeah, good. I have a couple other questions here from our audience. So Cassidy wants to know, what's your advice for coping with rejection?
Uh, Obviously, feel it out. Like, don't shove it under the carpet. Um,
Mhm.
like, acknowledge that it hurts. It's okay that it hurts,
Mhm.
and and then like pick yourself up and brush yourself off and try again. You, I've always heard this about successful people, that the ones who are successful just didn't quit. They just kept going. But I'm not saying
Yeah,
keep going after you've gotten, 10 letters in a row over several months and they're all no. Of course, you're going to feel bad about yourself and your writing. But take a breather. I wouldn't give up on that work either, because if you put time into that one work, who's to say that like the next person isn't the yes? And who's to say also
yeah.
what one person doesn't like? I have had some good lately. I've had some. Well, I haven't been trying for anything but scripts right now, but I'm going to go try for the novel. But for the scripts, a
Cool.
lot of them gave really great advice and said, "I'm not sure this is for us, but maybe another. I think another agent might feel differently," which is a really nice thing to say. It means this
Yeah,
isn't like something. It's not in all our tool house, wheelhouse. What's that called?
yeah. Wheelhouse, wheelhouse.
But someone else might
Yeah.
feel differently, which is
Hmm.
giving me hope. So it's a lot of no's before you get a yes. And again, you can self-publish. It's just that it's an awful lot of work, and you don't have the collaborative element that I do love. That's why sometimes I
Right.
do want to do a work again with a publisher, because you're getting the feedback from them. It's not all me and the people I hire. I do get feedback from my books from my
Oh,
editor and
good.
from beta readers, but it's nice when it's a publishing firm that can give you validation, I guess.
Yeah. And Jerry also asked, what is the best way to get over writer's block? I know you said you don't have that problem, but you coach authors. So what is it
Yeah,
that you would tell them to do?
and I have the problem of what to work on, as actually
Mm,
a lot of my people I've coached know that. I always say I don't know which to get started on, which will be more successful. And I think just starting is the thing. So you just have to tell yourself, well, just start, just putting pen to paper, and then the next day doing it. I think it's important to do it. That helps writer's block. You can write the next day and it can be crappy. It can be bull, but you just wrote something, and don't go back and try to edit it either. I think that's one of the things that sticks people a lot too. I never go
mm-hmm.
back after I've written creatively and edit that day. I have blocks of time. This is my editing time. But I
Yes.
have to have written a lot of chapters before I even go there. And sometimes I try to do the whole book, but it has to be plotted out very carefully when I do that. Usually, if I'm just starting a book and I haven't really solidified how the plot is going to be, but I've started, then I do go back and dabble and edit, and it helps me create the plot more. But it can be to your detriment, because you can get stuck too if you
Right.
if you edit while you're still writing the whole novel. So that's
That's,
also another writer's block thing that can happen. And I think going for walks, I find
mm,
water for me, so I go for a shower or a bath. It's just relaxing and
yeah.
lets me think about something else, I guess.
I've also heard someone say before, I can't remember who said this, um, but they said to turn off your screen while you're writing so that you don't see the words on the page, so that your brain, the part of your
Oh,
brain that edits, can't be editing as you're writing. So you're not filtering it the same way. And he's like, there's
oh,
going to be
I
lots of
couldn't do
typos
that.
and lots of
I
mistakes.
like to
He's,
read the sentence. I'm
yeah.
probably editing as I go as far as the sentence goes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why I don't write by hand anymore, because I can't hardly read my writing, and I scratch it all out. I don't scratch it out as much. Like, it's not. I don't think I edit as much when I'm typing. So for my
Yeah.
poems, they're all by hand still. I don't know why that's different than my novels. I still do it by
Interesting.
hand, and then I go and I type it out, and I might edit the poem a bit later after. But the whole poem's been written. It's because it's
Right.
shorter, I think. Whereas for a novel, I'm not going to write 70,000 words by hand. I
No.
saw a
Oh
guy
gosh.
online. I saw a guy the other day who does that. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. I can feel my hand cramping up thinking about that.
I wanted to give him advice, but it's unsolicited, so I didn't. But I just said, "Wow, good for you." But
Yeah.
oof.
Oh,
I
that
mean, you can do
sounds
dictation. If
painful.
anything, you can dictate now. Um,
Right.
I do that when I'm off. I'm not the best at always taking a vacation, as my family knows. I'm a writer. I'm always in my head that way. But one
Yeah.
way that I feel like I'm still remembering those ideas I have while I'm like on a vacation or seeing my family for a weekend. They live in Ottawa and I'm here. Is notes on the phone, so I can just dictate, or I can even type in notes. But sometimes I just
Mm.
speak into my phone, and then I've got a note, and it's there for when I come back on Monday.
So, of all of your books, do you have a favorite?
People ask that, and that's like choosing a favorite kid, right? You love
You
each
know?
one the same, but for
Yeah.
different reasons. That, and I don't have a second kid, but I guess I can do it with like with pets, right? Love them
Hmm.
all, but they all have different quirks and different things that and you relate to them differently. So mine change upon like every year, just like my favorite authors change every few years after I just because I'm growing and learning, I think.
Right.
But I think Lauren from last night and Lucky because they're a
Mm.
set together. Um, I just think that I like the fact that it's both literary, the way that I used language, and it also hits a commercial element too. So it's a bit of both, which is probably why
Yeah.
I'm still not hitting just commercial or just literary. But my next piece, I'm
Nice.
trying to do something that's quite commercial, but will always
Okay.
be true to my values and stuff. So I'll never change that. And I'm working on something that's a small town romance, but it's Christmas, so that's
Yeah.
crazy commercial.
Oh, nice.
Set in a small town in Canada, which might not be commercial because even producers said to me, "Well,
Right.
we don't like." I asked that. Well, we don't like to say it, but yeah, you should really set it in New York or California. I said, "Can I set it in Canada? I'm Canadian." Well, we don't like to say it, but it's going to do better if
Mm.
it's set in an American city. In 2023,
Uh,
okay, now the
yeah.
part of me, we were talking about the creative soul, the part of me that wants to fight that, right? Totally.
Hmm.
And so I've done Lauren from last night and Lucky are fictional Canadian towns. They didn't do as well as Good Nights and The Ticket. Is that
Right.
there's many reasons.
Yeah.
I know there's some suspense in Lauren from last night. Not everybody liked it's a bit darker.
Okay.
Like it's darker and then it has funny elements. Kind of like a movie. The ones that I wrote later in that series are even more so like a made for TV movie, um, which has like
Yeah.
watching Dead to Me right now. It
Oh,
has
that's
everything.
great.
It's quirky. It's bizarre. It's
Hmm.
murder mystery. It's funny. It's talking about ageism and
Yeah.
freaking menopause, and it's that's the kind of stuff I want to write. But I may have to move to California.
Well, that wouldn't be too bad.
It wouldn't. It's just another brain drain thing, right? I'm really anti
Yeah.
brain drain for Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. As a fellow Canadian, I appreciate reading
That
books
would
that are
be a
based here.
dream to be able to succeed at writing those kinds of books.
Hmm.
Funny as heck, but also talk about truth and vulnerability. Um, like
Yeah.
like Love Actually, which is old, but it just hit on so many different themes
Hmm.
and realities. And so that's Richard Curtis. I like the Richards. Richard Linklater, who wrote the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset,
Oh, okay.
After
Yeah.
Midnight series. They're just this guy who meets a girl one day and they get off the bus together, but they didn't know each other. They go, let's get off the bus in, is it Paris? I think it's Paris. Might be
Hmm.
Rome.
I think so.
Someone's going to correct me. They have a cult following.
Wow.
And the dialogue is just so real. And the things they talk about, like not loving your spouse after because the spark is gone and stuff that's really real and people are challenged by it. Like people go through those challenges. I
Hmm.
like that. I like talking about that stuff, but it's
Yeah.
not necessarily commercial. People want to cuddle up and watch a Christmas movie that doesn't remind them about all that pain.
Right.
So I think it'll be a struggle all my career trying to find that balance. But to be able to write about Canada, um, and to have it filmed, I put a joke. Where did I put that? I put that in something I was writing too. I think I put it in Lucky. I was kind of hinting at my own career. In Lucky,
Ah,
Mason at the end. Oh, it's a spoiler? Not really a spoiler. I think it's okay.
okay.
The two people here have read it, I think. Mason ends up working with someone in Canada and they're going to start a production company that makes Canadian movies and doesn't hide that they're made in Canadian towns. Because right
Nice.
now, the everywhere you go, you see a movie, but it's
Hmm.
filmed in Canada, but they pretend that it's made in New York or California or Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the Hallmark Christmas movies are filmed in my neighborhood at my local coffee shop. They're there all the
Yes,
time. It's great. Yeah.
yes. I saw. This is off topic, but I have to say it because I was in. My husband is from Maple Ridge, and we were driving down. That they film a lot of Hallmark movies there and
Hmm.
Netflix, and I saw Steve Carell, and
No
he looked
way.
over at me, and I was in the car, like I was in the passenger seat. Bill was driving, and I turned. We were at a stoplight. I turned, and he looked at me with his to me, like he didn't do that, but like it was in his eyes and his smirk, and I just went, and it was just phenomenal.
Oh,
And then
it's
we drove off, and
amazing.
that was like 2 summers ago. And then I went and Googled to double check because my kid, of course, goes, "Mommy, you're crazy." Like, no, it wasn't Steve Carell, one of my favorite comedians of all time,
Yeah.
and like producers. I think he produces now too. And sure enough, in August of whatever that year was, I forget. I think it was 2019 or maybe 2020. He was because we went there
Wow.
in the summer of the pandemic. It was better for a while, or 2021, and he films there, right there, and he was filming something that August, so it
That's
was
so
him.
exciting.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I'm the kind of person that I would never notice a celebrity. Like I would never pick them out in a crowd.
So that's part of
Um,
being a photographer because
oh
I've done
yeah.
a lot of when you ask about creative blocks, I just go to another art. So I take photos, and I used to make homemade greeting cards with photos on top, and then I put a bow around them and sell them in a pack.
Oh
And I've
nice.
painted and I've cartooned, and so I think I look at the world and I stop and I go, that would make a nice picture, or that would make a nice
Hmm.
painting. So I'm always looking at details,
That's cool.
which makes me lag behind my husband and kid who are off at a flea market, and they go, where's Heather? So then we had to start with, oh yeah, like, and they don't mean to go ahead, but I'm just like that. I'll just like lollygag as a little kid, and I'll be looking at something, and my husband got walkie talkies for that reason. This
Oh,
before the cell
that's
phone era.
amazing.
Like cell phones really hadn't taken off, and you couldn't have three in a family back then. It was too expensive.
Right.
So he got us walkie talkies.
That's so cute.
Heather, we're over here. Over, come find us.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. So before we wrap up, I would love to know, what do you read?
Uh, a lot. I read a lot of English lit Canadian novels because I was in Canadian Studies at Queen's, so I got a little overwhelmed with that after graduation because I'd read like 20 novels a year,
Oh,
a term actually. Um, so I moved on. That's probably why I moved on to romantic comedy at that point in life, like in my 30s. And I still love rom coms, but I
me
don't
too.
read them when I'm writing them because I feel like that'll affect my writing and my rhythm and the way I am funny in my
Interesting.
books. So I don't. And I didn't even know about one of the greats in rom coms, Sophie Kinsella, until I'd
Oh
written
yeah.
The Ticket. I'd done three novels, and a friend wrote me and says, "You remind me of Sophie Kinsella." I'm like, "Sophie who?" So then I discovered her,
Hmm.
and so after I think after I'd written Good Nights, I was like, well, I better figure out who this lady is. So I love her work. She's so funny.
Yeah.
Another one who's more indie and maybe not as known, so I'm going to mention her, Tana Fensky. She's hilarious,
Oh,
and hers are a little more spicy, for so people who like the spicy ones, and hilarious. Tana Fensky. Um, I also so that's for my light and by the pool and on the beach kind of read. And then
nice.
deeper, I like to read about physics and science. So
Oh,
Michio
cool.
Kaku is a physicist who talks to the layperson in a really easy to understand way. Well, sometimes I'm confused, but I like to challenge myself. about parallel
Yeah.
universes and
Oh,
black
interesting.
holes and the future of humanity.
Wow.
So that's a good balance for me. And then I like to
Hmm.
read a lot of autobiographies.
Nice.
Crazy love that, especially when I'm writing fiction, because that won't really affect my fiction.
Hmm.
I won't be influenced in any way. And I find that I learn from every person. I've read, all of Michael J. Fox's books. I love him.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I try for Canadians first and foremost. So I've read all of Alan Doyle's, who's a great big sea writer. He's got a really interesting
Hmm.
background from Newfoundland. And Rick Mercer,
Oh,
who is a
yeah.
comedian from CBC, and he's hilarious. So I also like to read a lot of funny people because it helps me with my humor. And my favorite novelist right now, but it changes over the. I mean, I'll always love him, but what I mean is you find somebody new and you get crazy
Hmm.
about them. But I can't not buy a Matt Haig book right now.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
he wrote The Midnight Library,
Okay.
and he wrote The Humans, which is he wrote that before Midnight Library, and it's my favorite. And it didn't sell as well, I don't think. It's still all his books do really well. Um,
Yeah.
and he's written a bunch of books that have become like The Boy Who Loved Christmas. They've become Christmas movies on television, but that one's more for
Nice.
children or children and their parents. But The Humans is a satire on the human condition and how ridiculous humans can be, and some of our traditions are so bizarre. It's because an
Yeah.
alien comes down to Earth
Oh,
and lives in a man's body, and yeah, it's a really odd premise. So some people might put it down, going, "This is too strange." But if you're up for a bit of fantasy in that sense, then I think you'll like where he goes with it and the satire in it. I like satire, but a lot of people don't
yeah.
even understand what that is. They take it too seriously. But I think,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. But you have to. It's a little wink.
Yeah. Great. And what's the best place for people to connect with you and learn more about your books, to get your books, to learn about who you are?
I am on Instagram way too much, but
Hmm.
quite honestly, I'm trying to write this novel, so I won't be on there. You can find me there daily, and you can send me a message or a comment, and I will try to answer within a couple days. I also
Perfect.
coach, and I'm doing that now. That's why I don't have a lot of time to do social media for hours. But you can
Hmm.
just DM me the word in one of my stories or in my comments. I've set it up so if you put the word coaching, not all caps, just coaching, then it'll tell you in the message. It'll give you more details about
Great.
what I do and how it works. Sends you to
Perfect.
it sends you to my page that I set up for coaching services. And I also have heathergraystewart.com, which sets up all my books, and you can also sign up for my newsletter so you can get a free ebook and
Oh,
get started
nice.
on my series. Yeah, the ticket is free there.
Great. Well, I will put all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on today and for joining us here. It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like you and I could talk all day.
I know, I feel like we just had a tea break. It was so lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you so much for having me. I learned a lot from you too, so it was really fun.
Oh, well, thank you.